There's a great story. I'm gonna butcher it a little bit, but I read it in a business book once about this chess prodigy guy who decides he wants to make all of his children chess prodigies. And so from the time they're born, he's teaching them chess. They don't do any activities outside of like chess. That's all they do. Chess all day, all day, all day for years. I mean, everything in their house, every day he'd play with them. They'd play each other. And they all grew up that way. All three kids became chess prodigies. And they asked him later about like these three kids. And they looked at them, they interviewed them about how messed up their childhood must have been. All of them turned out to be super well adjusted. All of them turned out to be, besides just geniuses with chess, but they were just like good, solid people with no regrets, no problems with their childhood. And I love that story because it really illustrates that what we think is normal, like your kid has to be in Little League, it has to go to public school from 9 to 5, you have to do this, you have to do that. And that's the only way you make a normal kid. In reality, just like intention, I think a parent's intention and attention with their kid, your kid's going to most likely turn out okay. Versus the prescribed American,
That
path.
is a really great point. I agree with that. And you look at it in farming communities and things. It's almost like what I think is missing, in my opinion, when kids are not well adjusted, really seems to be the intactness of the home.
Yeah.
If the home is intact, and parents that love the kids, spend time with the kids, and they are doing what families are kind of supposed to do together. In other words, the household is not just run by a parent or both parents. The household is I mean, you're all kind of in this together.
Yeah.
You train your kids to be a part of running the household. They're not in charge of the household, by God, but they are a part of this. You see that in farming communities. You see it in communities where they're family-owned businesses. The kids just go, well, that's what you have to do for the business. So but you're doing it together. And so now the family is defining social roles, rewards and punishments, here's the expectations. And when you abide by the expectations, you're living in peace and you're getting the rewards, the benefits of doing that. And then there are punishments and uncomfortable situations when you're like, well, I don't want to live your life. Well, and I'm going to do what I want to do. Now you have that friction. So what is missing is, we've let America, whether it's, as you say, the American dream, whether it's the state, whether it's just a secular culture, whether it's Hollywood, whoever it is, whoever them is, they have dictated what is normal and what is moral and the way that things should be, which actually, funny enough, even the idea of public school is actually a secular idea. Now, it was the Puritans that began the first schools, but they weren't public schools. They were basically they were Christian-oriented schools to teach kids how to read and this and the other so that they could understand God's good world and the Creator. So it was different. That would be more like a Christian education. The idea of a secularized public education is actually a socialist idea so that you can educate children into a love for the state and a devotion for the state to tell them what is moral and what is good and how they are to live. So the state tells them where their place is in life. Well, guess where their place in life is according to the state? It is basically, you are not an individual. You are a part of the collective here. And we're going to teach you to be a good citizen as defined by the commies, in my opinion. Yeah. So anyway, all that to say, when the state is doing that, well, all of a sudden you have kids totally depressed, medicated, anxiety. And by the way, in the 2020s, the highest levels of teen suicide we've ever had, and depression and medication. So not only are they depressed, they are highly medicated in a way that we've never even known. It wasn't even possible in the past. It wasn't even something we thought we could do. So even with all the medication that is supposed to help, still the most anxiety. So why is that happening? Because they're all in public school and they're all in Little League and they're all doing all the programs. I would say it's because there is not the intact home life teaching us. We don't have any communal values, and the home is not teaching it. So that's a really long answer, but you just ticked one of the things I'm passionate about. So I just went off on a tangent there.
Well, let me just ask you then bluntly, like, do you believe homeschooling is better for Christians than public schooling? Should Christians homeschool their kids?
I think, short answer. Well, I shouldn't say yes, because that might be a little too drastic. But let's answer it like this. I do not think Christian parents should send their kids to public school. I think there are alternatives. So it doesn't have to be homeschooling. Now, I don't want to say that I think it's sin to do it. So I want to be really clear. I am not saying it's sinful. Lots of my friends do, and lots of my church leaders do as well. So it's absolutely not sin. I'm saying, in my opinion, I don't think that's a good idea. And I think that some people that still say, a lot of the people that would still say, I think that's a little too extreme, John. I think it's because they probably don't know what their kids are being taught. You know, I think that once you see it, you're like, oh my Lord, this is so bad. I have non-Christian friends who are coming to me in the last year, really since COVID changed it because they got aware of what their kids were being taught. And they've called me going, where is this coming from? They're like, I'm not into the Jesus stuff, but this isn't what I was taught, And so I think there are alternatives. Homeschooling, Christian classical education, those schools are popping up all over. Yeah. You need to look for one of those because they have great curriculums, and they teach you to understand God's good world. And that's what schooling really should be about,
Yeah. That's beautiful, man. Yeah. We, the last couple of years we've homeschooled. This year we're homeschooling, but we're homeschooling with 5 other families and their kids. We have 9 little kids that show up every day.
Oh yeah.
And then we have a tutor that we hired to help kind of facilitate a lot of stuff, but we're still homeschooling the kids. And we just split the cost of that tutor between all the families. So we're homeschooling without the, the fact that my wife doesn't have to spend 40 hours a week sitting in a classroom with one kid.
I love it.
I've also found that my kids will pay 10 times more attention to that tutor or when there's other kids around than if it's just my wife and my kid or me and my kid.
Right.
They're just bouncing off the walls. It's worked out so well. And a lot of people look at homeschooling and say, well, yeah, it must be nice to be rich to be able to afford homeschooling. But there are ways to make it, cheaper, more cost effective by doing things like that.
Well, I think that if you don't mind, I never talk about this on a podcast. I've never talked about this. So
good.
But I am passionate about it. And so not to keep going down a tangent, but the question you have to ask yourself is, I don't want people to think I'm being judgmental. It's a question. If the shoe fits, I don't know, pray on it, think on it. If your kid's 18, 19, 20, 25, whatever, and your kid has become a Marxist, let's just say it has an ugly view of the world, or is some sort of radical gender theorist or something like that, or comes home, here's a good one, comes home and tells you, say, Dad, I know you don't know it, but you're just talking from your privilege because you are a racist. You don't know you're a racist, but you are, and it's disgusting, or whatever.
Yep.
Or they're indoctrinated into some sort of sexual craziness. I don't even know. We don't have to go down. We don't have to explain what that means. Sexual craziness. What amount of money would you give to change that? Would you give $1,000? Would you give $5,000? Would you say, all right, my retirement fund, maybe it's not amazing. Maybe I can't retire early. It's not what I want it to be. Would I take $10,000 out of my retirement fund to go back in history and have paid for the homeschool curriculum? Would I have done that? Everybody would do it. If it's possible. It may not be possible for everybody. Yeah. The question is just what is the priority going to be? And we have been trained in the American way of thinking, which I love America, so I'm not dissing it, but the American dream is not synonymous with biblical parenting. So I would just say, is it worth it? Could you do it? What could you sacrifice so that you could do that for your kids? And then if you still say, I don't really think it's worth it, I would say, well, just ask your kids what they're learning at school. Find out. Yeah. It's dark.
Yeah. 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 I heard a stat the other day, and I don't know how legit this is, but it basically said I think it was 33% of all teenage girls now are identifying as gender, fluid.
Yes.
It's that's a third. Mm-hmm. Now, even forget the argument of whether or not it's natural and forget Christian stuff and all that for a minute. There's no possible way that 33% of all young girls are mistaken or they were raised wrong, right? That's just not exist. So there's something culturally going on, and it's happened in other civilizations, other even countries in the past few years where it's risen and then dropped. So there's something going on in America right now. So just knowing that, going to the sexual confusion, if my kid has a 33% chance if I send him to public school of that happening, I will do anything in my power to make sure that they're not being indoctrinated by weirdness.
Absolutely. And I think even as we, not that we are now, but even as we pivot into talking about my book and whatnot, one of the things I talk about a lot in the book is this woke worldview. And we can get into that about what that even means. But what parents have to understand, it's not just that they're being taught that there are 32 genders or 92 or infinity genders. It's not even that they're being taught that these things exist or that we should even think that it's, quote unquote, normal or whatever. They're actually pushing it as it makes you a better person. Mm-hmm. And we can get into that, to why that is. But if you're a kid going to school and you are told that if you are what they call cisgender, if people know what cisgender, all cisgender means is that the way that I view myself, that's what gender is. That's how they define it anyway. The way I view myself as a man or a woman, which is called gender identity, versus my actual biology, meaning I have male genitalia. So if your sex and your gender identity coincide, then you are called cisgender. Okay. In other words, you're boring. You're just you're obviously a man. Yeah. I can see you got a huge beard. You're a man. Did
you just gender me?
I just yes, because I didn't ask you your pronouns, so I may have triggered you, dead named you or something like triggered. That. But yeah, but the idea is you're a man and you say, yeah, I know that I'm a man. And, well, you're boring. Yep. And not only
you're not special. Yeah.
You're not special. Yeah. But not only are you not special, you're actually in a class that is privileged and is hurting other people who are not privileged. So in other words, you don't know it, but you're hurting people. Yeah. You're oppressing people. What do you think that does to kids? Not only does it confuse them, it makes them want to be special. Yep. It makes them not want to be boring. I don't want to be a boring, just heterosexual, cisgendered white dude, a white chick and whatever it may be. But not only that, it tells you you're being a bad person. And there's an easy fix. If you don't want to be a bad person, well, there's an easy fix. Just be gender fluid. Yep. That's what's happening. We can get into that or not.